Okay, so I originally had another video I was planning on reacting to next, but this Diddy stuff came out. The verdict was read. It's kind of blowing up all over the internet, and it seemed very interesting to me. Someone sent this to me, so let's just get it going. What else is there to say, right?
Let's go back to Rahema, who is getting more color from inside the courtroom as it pertains to reaction from Sean Combs and his family. Fill us in.
Absolutely, Anna. The judge has thanked the jurors, and they have left the courtroom. And in fact, the judge has now adjourned until 1 o'clock this afternoon. At that point, this courtroom erupted in cheers. We're hearing that Sean Combs, he got on his knees with his head in his hands in his chair, and he was praying. The family was clapping and cheering, big hugs all around, big loud shouts of joy, attorneys hugging one another while the prosecutors simply walked past them.
Yeah, I mean, that's typically how most court cases go, generally speaking, regardless of whatever the verdict is. I mean, Diddy was being charged of so much stuff. Like, at this point, like, the amount of stuff Diddy has done over the past several decades is just, like, long list. There's documentaries covering everything, but the short of it is he's a weird freak. He's definitely a danger to society, I would say so. So as you can see on the right-hand side, there's count 1 of racketeering and conspiracy, which is not guilty. Sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, not guilty. The reason why he was found not guilty of all of these, even though we definitely know he definitely did this shit. He was absolutely involved in this shit, but the court probably found him not guilty because of there's all sorts of technicalities you can get out of court in, but I think it's probably because they weren't charging the other people involved. They were just charging Diddy, and he wasn't the only person involved in this entire conspiracy. So he probably got off on that technicality because of that. But the stuff that he absolutely does have to plead to is the transportation to engage in prostitution. There's also domestic violence, which apparently he did admit to in court. Which is a very weird way to downplay it. I mean, I wonder if they're going to mention that later here as well. So,
and the defense team now has gone into the gallery where the family was seated and hugging the family. The courtroom is now slowly starting to clear. But what we had heard from the judge before the verdict was read, he had admonished everyone to please stay calm, that he did not want any outbursts during the reading of the verdict. But that verdict has been read.
Wait, is that like Diddy himself? He didn't want the actual like outburst? Is that what she mentioned? I completely missed that.
Slowly starting to clear. But what we had heard from the judge before the
oh, the judge. Gotcha. It was the judge, not Diddy himself. Okay.
The court has been adjourned until 1 o'clock this afternoon, and that was the signal for this family to rejoice over what they believe is the best part of what this verdict is, that he's been found not guilty of the top charges against him.
Which I think is bullshit. I mean, we absolutely know that he did do those things. But what I also don't think a lot of people understand is that he can still, even though he got guilty for 2 charges of transportation and engagement with prostitution, he could still go to jail for a really long time. You have to take into account Diddy is like, what, 55 years old, I think. He's like in his mid-50s. So each count of these things can be up to 10 years in prison. We don't know how long he's actually going to get. And also his bail was apparently denied as well. So he could still go to prison for a very, very long time just on these alone. But also, I don't know. If it were up to me personally, I would have put him there for life. I think Diddy is a danger to society, but I don't know. I guess the court of law says otherwise. It is what it is.
And as his attorney says, it means he will not be spending the rest of his life in prison. However, we should remember that the prosecution is saying that they're going to be going for the maximum penalty that he could face. And in the courtroom, they were telling him.
So that would be up to 20 years then, because it's up to 10 years per charge then, right?
Judge, that could be a maximum of 20 years.
Yeah.
That would be substantial.
Yeah.
But it probably should be remembered that they're going to say that he has never faced charges like this before. And so that might be something that would be considered in when the judge does sentence Combs for the...
You know, if someone's never faced charges before like that, then they might consider that. They can also let him out a little earlier than 20 years if he's on quote-unquote good behavior as well. There's all sorts of stuff that can happen. You know, I again, if it were up to me, I think he should just be there for life. Just fucking lock him away and throw away the key. I'm sure a lot of us would want that, but I don't know. I think we have to remember that the court of law and the court of public opinion are two separate entities entirely. Look at O.J. Simpson, for instance. You know, the court of law found him not guilty, but the court of public opinion absolutely knows you did that shit. Now, I understand the court of public opinion can get things wrong, obviously. You know, there are situations where the court of public opinion is incorrect based on a lack of available information. Again, case-by-case basis. It's more so in the online atmosphere that winds up being the case. But, yeah, in the real world, generally speaking, I believe that, like, most people are generally correct on the court of public opinion. Not always, you know, there are outliers, of course, but
the federal charges that he was found guilty of just this morning, Anna, but lots of cheers all around in that courtroom.
And a reminder to our viewers and those who may just be joining us, he was
like
found
I said,
guilty
that's going to be inevitable, like with every single courtroom. So
2 of the 5 charges. Those 2 charges both had to do with transportation to engage in prostitution. The max sentence for each of those charges is 10 years.
Which means 20, yep.
In prison, is my understanding. Christy, would those run concurrently, or could it end up he ends up 20 years total behind bars?
So the sentence on counts 3 and 5.
It makes you wonder if he actually does go to prison for 20 years. You know, like, would he be able to live through his entire sentence? Because by the time he'd get out, assuming that he even gets through his maximum sentencing anyways, he would be getting out of jail when he's, like, in his mid-70s. So I don't even know. I guess it's up in the air.
Could run concurrently. There's no mandate that those would need to be consecutive to one another. And again, it sounds like prosecutors are saying that they will seek the maximum term of imprisonment on those counts. And what is important to note is even though he has been acquitted on these other counts, there is at sentencing an ability to consider relevant conduct. So conduct that pertains to the offenses but is not conduct he was convicted of. The judge can...
So would that imply that maybe they could take into account the domestic violence that they showed? Because there's literal video evidence that resurfaced back in May 2024. I'm sure you guys know this already, back in May 2024. That video footage resurfaced. I think it was the actual footage itself was from 2016 of him literally being extremely abusive, like actually like abusive to this like one woman in like the hotel hallways or whatever. It's actually fucking insane. Like it's very difficult to watch.
Consider that at the time of sentencing. So all of the evidence that this judge sat through, you know, over a month of trial here.
So I wonder if they're going to take that into account, even though that isn't necessarily like one of the charges listed here. I mean, he pretty much, I remember like during the trial, he like downplayed the sex trafficking or like one of the things he was being charged with, saying, yes, I mean, there was definitely some domestic violence that happened, but that's about it. And I'm just like, if you have to downplay your actions by saying, oh, this is domestic violence, yep, then I don't know. It kind of makes me sound like you're, it kind of just comes off like you are just downplaying a much bigger crime, if anything, so.
all of the evidence of that, the violence, of the threats, of just the extortion, the arson, all of that, the judge can.
Like the arson?
Threats, of just the extortion, the arson, all of.
So there was arson? I didn't know. Okay, I'm gonna be real with you guys. I haven't been following all of the trial. I've been kind of getting like bits and pieces. Like I've just been like tuning in and out. I didn't know there was like actual arson involved. That's actually fucking insane if that's true. I wouldn't doubt that it's true. If he like is involved in all these other like conspiracy, sex trafficking, and like being a legit just predator. Like there's no nicer way of saying this guy is a legit fucking predator.
Consider it in terms of his relationship with these two women in transporting them for prostitution. Again, he was not found guilty of those counts, but the judge may consider that relevant to his determination of what the proper sentence will be.
Wait, doesn't it say here he was found guilty of transportation to engage in prostitution? Or is it transportation in prostitution? Are those two separate, like, charges?
In terms of his relationship with these two women in transporting them for prostitution. Again, he was not found guilty of those counts, but.
So is she talking about like different counts of engaging in prostitution? I'm confused.
Sentence will be.
What will you expect this afternoon then in just deciding whether he gets bail?
He definitely can't.
I think that's hard to say. I think we're going to have to see.
I mean, I suppose it's possible, but like I'm pretty sure he like can't get bail in this case.
Both sides are going to submit letters by 1 p.m. and the prosecutors are going to be looking now at cases where just convictions for the Mann Act, transportation for prostitution, led to a prison sentence. And by the way, there are plenty. They shouldn't have a hard time finding those because they do exist, even if you have not had the sex trafficking count with the mandatory.
So I guess it's technically not entirely over. I mean, the verdict was read according to this person who seems to be like an attorney. They can still like take into account some of the other stuff because like there's a lot to take into account with Diddy. Like, there really is a lot of things you can be found guilty of. Like, I mean, there's a reason why Diddy Party became a meme with, like, all the baby oil stuff is fucking preposterous.
A minimum, even just transporting for prostitution, those counts do carry prison terms, and people in the Southern District of New York.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, he could go to prison for like 20 years, which I think is fine, depending on if he lives through those terms. Like I said, if it were up to me, I would put him in there for life, but sometimes you can't get everything you want, right?
Sentenced to prison, years in prison, even just on those counts. So expect them to highlight those examples in the letter. Obviously, the defense will take the different tack of saying, look, the jury here spoke up loud and clear. They didn't believe that the violence and the threats were connected in any way to the sex acts. And so, Judge, you should disregard that and let him walk. We'll see what happens. It will be interesting. I think it would be incredibly difficult for a judge to have sat through, and this is a wonderful judge. He has been incredibly thoughtful. He's a new judge. He's only been on the bench for about 2 years, but he's been fantastic, really thoughtful, really careful in his deliberations. And I expect, it would be very hard to have sat through this trial and heard what he's heard and say, you can go out on bail. So I expect he will stay detained.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to hope that that's the case, but there have been some crazy fucking judges, especially under the Trump administration. I mean, it's hard to, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being fucking black-pilled, and maybe that's just me being, like, a little bit, like, pessimistic. But, I mean, Trump was literally considering pardoning P. Diddy on his own volition. And, I mean, Trump was also considering pardoning every January 6th rioter, and he was also thinking of pardoning Andrew Tate as well, I'm pretty sure. So like under the Trump administration, it's kind of hard to not be black-pilled about a lot of this stuff.
end. But
I've
been wrong with my expectations before in this trial, so who knows?
Well, it's all, in the hands now of the judge after the jury came out with their verdict. Again, not guilty on 3 counts, the most serious charges that Sean Diddy Combs was facing, guilty on 2 counts of the transportation for purposes of prostitution. I do wonder, because we saw really what triggered these charges was the civil case that was brought against him initially. Could he face additional civil cases or complaints that way? And what about state charges, Catherine? Given this was a federal...
I would like to hope that that's the case. I mean, we can only hope, only time will tell, but I don't know, man. It's hard to have any I guess hope these days, considering our administration is a lot more fucked now than ever, it seems.
Case.
Well, there are actually pending civil suits that are sort of similar allegations with different individuals.
Okay, so that's good. I mean, so this definitely, this is far from over, even though the verdict was read here. So it seems like all this is far from over, and we're still going to get more updates on this. Okay, that's good.
State... Manhattan's jurisdiction is solely in Manhattan, so he would have to be charged with acts that occurred in Manhattan if they're not beyond the statute of limitations.
Oh, fuck off. Oh, stupid technicalities. Not to this person who's just giving insight. I was just saying fuck off as in general. Anyway, oh my god. Dude, the legal system is far from perfect, and I think this just goes to show that, you can get off on some really fucking dumb technicalities. It's fucking preposterous, is what it is.
See that, but I don't speak on behalf of the office, and I have no inside knowledge. But
absolutely demonic. Holy fuck.
There are a number that are pending, so he will always be in jeopardy for those type of actions, but it doesn't involve prison time. It just involves the loss of money.
All right. Well, I guess that was the P. Diddy trial. Yeah, like I said, if it were up to me, I would fucking keep him there for life. But again, you can't get everything you want, and yeah, I mean, at the very least, he'll go to prison for a long time. But I don't know. Apparently, there's still some other stuff that needs to be considered, so I guess only time will tell if he's actually going to go for life. Hopefully, Trump doesn't fucking pardon him. It's absolutely... It's almost unsurprising that Trump says he wants to pardon him in every January 6er, and the Andrew Tate as well. So, yeah...